It's time to do business. 55 minutes of business is what we do on Business Incorporated. Here's what we have prepared for you today. In Zimbabwe, blueberry farmers are increasing their exports. And in Nigeria, CNG conversion plan is expanding, is getting more attention. We say congratulations to Tunisia. Their rate has been upgraded. The long-term foreign currency issuer default is now CCC+. Good afternoon, I'm John Mekwa. This is Business Incorporated. You're welcome to the program. We start from the global space. Oil prices extended gains on Tuesday as the market eyed United States output concerns in the aftermath of Hurricane Francine and expectations of lower U.S. crude stockpiles. Let's look at the numbers right there. This is contract features for November. It went up 16 cents. That's for Brent to $72.91 a barrel. WTI of the United States went up just about 34 cents to $70.43 a barrel. And yes, some output is still being affected by Francine. It's not yet been reopened. The impact of Hurricane Francine on the output in the United States Gulf of Mexico countered, however, Chinese demand concerns ahead of this week's U.S. Federal Reserve. So tomorrow is a big day for that Federal Reserve interest rate cut decision that we've been talking about for months now. Tomorrow we'll be here in a couple of hours and we'll see what will come out of that meeting. Meanwhile, about 12% of crude production and 16% of natural gas output in the U.S. is still being shut off because of that Hurricane Francine. We're still in the global space now, looking at metals. Gold prices hovered near a record high today, Tuesday, ahead of the anticipated interest rate cut meeting, which is supposed to hold, or we're supposed to get to know tomorrow, because the meeting is supposed to end tomorrow, the U.S. interest rate reduction cycle, which could see policymakers deliver an outsized cut. I wonder what outsized cut would look like. Now look at numbers for it. Now we see spot silver went up 10.1%. That's a huge move right there, $30.79. Platinum is also up 0.6%, $986.90. Palladium 1% up, $1,087.09. Now gold also, the dollar also recorded a very huge move in the midst of all of this. All attention seems to be the United States Federal Reserve, but zero yield bullion tends to be a preferred investment. Lower interest rates, so we might see gold going there. Now the dollar was down 0.1%, making gold less expensive for holders of other currency. Another data that is being followed at this time is the August United States retail sales. That's supposed to be out later on today. And we'll see how that happens. Outside the United States, however, Chinese markets are closed for the day because of the Mid-Autumn Festival break. And we know that, of course, China is a major contributor to the markets. Now back in Nigeria, expecting affordable price for fuel in the short term, so medium term is unrealistic benefit of the Dangote refinery, but we could expect energy security. This is the view of Mr. Bismarck Rawani, the Chief Executive Officer of the Financial Derivatives Company. He made a comment earlier today on Business Morning.
Dangote refinery, or any refinery for that matter, apart from government-owned refineries, are in business to produce at a profit. Two, they will produce at a price point where their marginal cost equals their marginal revenue. And they will not sell below cost. If not, if they did that consistently, they will go out of business. I think those are fundamental. Secondly, what are Nigerians struggling with today? They're struggling with high price of petrol, unavailability and uncertainty as to when you will get it. Then also about quality. So if you take those three things put together, what Dangote refinery is assuring the country is that, one, we will assure you of quality, we will assure you of quantity, but that pricing is not necessarily in the hands of Dangote refinery, but in the hands of the market. The market determines the price, including the global crude price, the a guaranteed margin, and the cost of processing. It's as simple as that. Nobody goes into business to sell below its cost price. If not, that is suicide. So Dangote would not have been where he is today if he was doing that. He would have gone out of business a long time ago in other endeavors.
So that's it. Of course, the issue of energy security, energy affordability in Nigeria is an ongoing one, which we hope will have at least a soft landing sometime soon. Now, talking about energy security in the country, we've been focusing a whole lot on the oil and gas. What about the alternative? The CNG is one alternative which the federal government is pushing. We see the federal government presidential compressed natural gas initiative. They're targeting the creation of about 100,000 jobs from an estimated 1 million conversion of vehicles. And the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Committee, that initiative is a scheme which seeks to expand the use of gas for fueling vehicles in Nigeria. They've signed deals with about 75 conversion firms nationwide. This is part of the government's policy to reduce, well, the connection or dependence on petrol and diesel. The agreements cover 8 states, and they're set to expand. But of course, there are so many issues that have come out of this. I wonder if you watched our news at 10 last night. A lot of people are still complaining about the issue of cost of conversion. So even when we have this center, 75 of them, they've been connected into the system now. What about the cost for that? Let's speak now to the head of commercial of that initiative, that's of the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative. Mr. Tosin Koka joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Koka, good afternoon and welcome to Channels Television.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here.
Great. So we see that you're expanding your footprints in the country. You now have more than 75 dealers where conversion can be done. So tell us about that first. What's the requirement? How do people qualify for that? Any vehicle, any generators? I know people also like to change or convert their generator usage also. So tell us how that works.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, the Presidential CNG initiative is focused at the moment on the transportation sector. The idea is to use the alternative which we have, which is CNG, to fuel the nation, to fuel the transport sector. So Mr. President has directed that we approach this way, and we are focusing primarily at the moment on the mass transit sector. So that is for commercial vehicles, commercial operators who are affiliated with the unions, which are your NURTW, your NARTO, and the RITIAN, as well as the state-affiliated, state-run taxi and bus companies. So these companies, these drivers can come with their vehicles and their memberships or their registrations, and come to these up to over 75 now conversion centers, which we have signed up with, and they can have their vehicles converted to CNG, so they'll run at dual CNG, that's petrol and CNG, the dual fuel, and that will be at no cost to them. The government is taking on the cost of that conversion kit as well as the installation.
Okay.
So that's what we've been pushing out. We pushed out over the weekend. We kick-started this massive push to do 10,000 conversions. We started with just over 1,000 kits at the weekend, and we're just going to be rolling those out as the days and weeks progress.
Yeah, well, of course, sounds nice when you say at no cost, but what has been the response so far from this, operators of the mass transit?
Oh, so far it's been good. We had a very good response. All the sites, we had 18 sites that we delivered kits to over the weekend, and they were full. We did a promo which we called Operation First Come First Served, and we had a number of drivers turn up, and I think they were all oversubscribed, if I'm not mistaken, where we had a promo where the first 50 would get converted. So the process, is two-staged. First of all, the vehicles must come for pre-inspection, and that's what was happening on Saturday, whilst we awaited the arrival of kits if they hadn't been there already. So we did pre-inspections, which means the cars come. We check your details of the driver and the registration, make sure everything there is correct and they're truly able to qualify for this. And then they check the vehicle, they check the state of the vehicle, and to see if it is truly convertible. So that means, has it been well kept? Is it all in order, or do they need to do any modifications before we can actually put the CNG kit and cylinders in these vehicles? And once the car has been passed fit and ready for conversion, we schedule the conversion, and it takes a few hours, and within a day they should be ready to go. And the uptake has been good. People are very, very keen. Of course, the price of petrol has skyrocketed over the last couple of weeks. So here is an alternative, which we believe is a good alternative. It's a good, cleaner, safer, and cheaper, much cheaper alternative to the petrol that we've been using and has been effectively, bankrupting the country for so long.
Yeah, cleaner, safer, but the cheaper part, a lot of people will ask, is it really cheaper? How much is it to fill a tank, for instance? I know you're dealing with the buses, the public transports for now, and obviously it has to be maintained. They have to keep the tanks full. Is it really cheaper at the end of the day, or is it because of this new price of petrol?
No, it's always been cheaper. Even before the price of petrol went up, it is cheaper. Currently, you can fill gas for as low as 230 naira per standard cubic meter. We call it scum, which is roughly equivalent to 1 liter of petrol, 1 liter. So, that on its own is cheaper. So a cylinder of gas can cost up to about 3, 4, maybe the larger ones can be between 4,500 naira to fill. And that will take you a good 300 kilometers or so. So it is cheaper. Yes, you might have to maybe refill more frequently than you have to refill your petrol tank. But let me give you an example. An Uber driver or a Bolt driver who typically earns maybe 40, 50,000 naira per day on their business, they would probably spend a big chunk of that buying petrol. 20, 30,000 naira refilling, whereas the same guy will earn the same 40, 50,000 naira per day, but only spend about 4,000 naira a day on gas. So there already, it is cheaper, and the Bolt or Uber driver is pocketing, quite a lot more. Now, what we're doing here with this conversion incentive program is government is giving these kits to operators for free. For the rideshare guys, your Bolt and Ubers, InDrive and the like, those are at a 50% discount. Nevertheless, government is giving these at a significant discount or for free, and it is expected, and we're working with the unions and the organizations that we sign up with on this, to ensure that these savings that they're making are passed on to the consumer. There's no point in us just giving these kits and then the operators are just pocketing the money. It is essential, it is written into our agreements and our understandings with them that these are passed on to the consumer, so that everybody enjoys the benefits of this initiative.
How soon do we expect this, at least cheaper conversion, or maybe even free, to head to the private sector, individuals, and all of that?
Well, you'll appreciate that we can only do so much at a time. At the moment, we're focusing purely on the public, the commercial sector as directed. But there are kits available across the nation. Most of these conversion centers that we are partnering with, they also have their own kits, which they have brought in. And what we understand, we appreciate that the cost of conversion is not cheap, is not high. Not everyone has from 700,000-800,000 naira up to 1.5 million, depending as the case may be, depending on their vehicle. However, what we are doing to make it accessible to all is working with a number of finance organizations, finance lenders, to make products available so that the average man, salary earners, business people, can also come in and have access to these conversions. So things such as spread payments or different products, so we're working with them actively on that. And, it's not something that government is blind to. We are very conscious of that. At the end of the day, it is better for all of us if we transition to CNG. The sooner, the better, because one, it is cleaner. Two, everyone benefits and everyone has more money in their pocket, which on its own is good for the economy, generates the economy, because you can spend that money doing other things or you can save, but basically you're not just pouring that money into petrol and petrol and petrol again.
Yeah, well, I guess the government will have to do more to encourage the conversion, as you yourself said. It's kind of expensive, for an individual to cough out, especially at a time like this, about 800,000 naira at least, to get that conversion. And of course, even though you're working with about 75 centers for the maintenance and refilling, you and I know that will not even be enough, even for the public transportation operators that you're targeting at this time, for the areas that they will have to.
You're correct. Yes, the 75 that we have so far are just in a small handful of states. We want to touch every single state in this country, and we'll need best part of 2,000 conversion centers nationwide. So what we have at the moment is just a start, it's a drop in the ocean. We have to do a lot more. So we know that there are a lot of conversion centers out there that haven't quite come into the fold yet. So we're urging all to get in touch if they haven't already yet. We are also going out, deploying our own field officers to go out there and to bring those in who are already operating, ensuring that they're meeting the right regulations, the standards. And once we've checked that, we have a very robust system. Once we check that, we sign them on board and we continue to push this initiative through these centers. We need as many as possible because to be able to meet our target of 1 million vehicle conversions between the next 18 to 24 months, we can't do that with 75 or 100 or even 1,000 conversion centers.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Head of Commercial for Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative, Mr. Tosin Kuka. Let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll head to the markets with Will Ibong. Welcome back to Watching Business Incorporated on Channels Television. We'll head to the markets now with Will Ibong. Will? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So we see the markets coming up at intraday. Nigeria was closed yesterday for the public holiday, but we see it coming up strong at intraday. Well, I hope it's strong. Closes strong, 0.1%.
Yeah, well, I would like to call Mr. Bismarck Rawani,
and not say you put a touch of red to it.
Every time I wear red, the market is red. You can see the market green. I obviously have red. So.
Let's wait till the close of business. So 97,000 points. We've seen that for the index. We're checking in on major stock markets in Africa at intraday, and we're seeing the sentiments mostly positive. Nigeria is coming up strong, as we've said. GSE in South Africa is up nearly 1%, and this is a very good one. We see how the market closes today. Let's look at Egypt's EGX 30 and see how they performed at intraday. However, they were in the red, slightly down 0.01%, still at 30,000 points there. And then we'll see the GSA in Kenya closing yesterday's session strongly in positive territory. But let's look at other markets now, the fixed income space, to see what's happening there, especially with inflation numbers that's tapered now for 2 consecutive months. We'll also want to know expectations and see what the CBN is going to do with interest rates. But we're going to be talking to Chuka Nwachukwu, who is the Group Head Assets and Liability Management, UBA. Good afternoon, Chuka. It's good to have you on the show. Chuka, as I was saying, inflation has dropped for 2 consecutive months now. How does this align with the current market liquidity that we have?
Thank you, Will. The inflation figure is as a result of what happened in August. Though we've seen market liquidity pretty tight. Market currently opened at over 400 billion debit. But then we expect to see a lot of inflows coming towards the end of the month, starting from today. We have about well over 600 billion in coupon payments coming in between now and next week. And so that will really affect the rate in the market. However, presently the liquidity constraint is still there. And of course, the inflation figure also is not just a factor of market liquidity. It's also a factor of so many other things, as well as food inflation, FX inflation, and other. So, however, by and large, liquidity is pretty tight, but we expect to see between now and end of the week, robust system liquidity coming, like I earlier mentioned.
Okay, so following this decline in inflation, what are expectations when the MPC, when the CBN MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, meets next week? What do you think is going to happen, Chuka?
So ordinarily, we expect that the MPC will begin to reduce rate, but then the event of the couple of weeks within 2 weeks, the increment in fuel pump, that will obviously affect MPC decision, and so we will not see that. We see that play out in September. So my take and then the market expectation is that MPC will probably be cautious. I see them holding the current MPR rate. I do not think that they will hike further. Don't forget that the hiking also have the effect in terms of borrowing and lending, and then of course some of the sectors are really affected, especially the manufacturing sector. So I think that MPC will hold rate. I think that they will just be cautious and then watch the effects. They have moved rate over 800 basis points this year alone, and I expect that they will hold this rate. Considering the fact that some of the the hike and then they're beginning to see results, which have been very positive in terms of reducing inflation.
You do share the sentiment of most analysts, so we'll wait and see what the CBN will do. But how is market faring on the first day of trade? Yesterday was a public holiday. What instruments are investors looking at, and what end of the curve are they looking at right now?
So being that there will be MPC meeting next week, and then of course, market is just coming out from the holiday. Currently, the market is slightly liquid, like I mentioned earlier, due to the coupon payment that was paid early today. And so we expect to see, we've seen a bit of a bullish sentiment. Most of the coupon payment, investors are reinvesting it into, the securities. So on the T-bill side, for example, we've seen a yield, slightly decreased. The 1 year, which printed at last week, printed at 18.59, is currently trading about 50 basis points below where it opened. That also shows that the bullish sentiment, going into today's trading due to the coupon payment and then liquidity that came in. On the bond side, we've also seen bullish sentiment on the 2029 and then 2033 bond. So that also indicate that most of the investors are reinvesting some of this coupon payment. And so going into the end of the week, we see moderate trading, especially with the fact that the MPC meeting is next week, and then most of the investors and traders are have one eye on that, and people obviously are going to be trading cautiously, depending on the outcome of the MPC meeting next week.
Thank you for that outlook, Chuka Nwachukwu, Group Head, Assets and Liability Management, UBA, for sharing your perspective. Thank you so much. So we'll move on to other markets now in the Gulf region. Middle East, we're seeing mostly positive sentiments at intraday. Abu Dhabi was up 0.25% at intraday. We'll also see Dubai slightly up 0.06%. Let's look at the stocks within other regions. Saudi, Qatari, they were trading in opposite directions at intraday. We see the Tadawul, that's the Saudi index, up 0.05%, and the Qatari index is down 0.42%. Now, GCC investors are going to be looking at the Fed. They're tracking the possible rate cuts, the decision by the U.S. Federal Reserve this Wednesday. Will the Fed cut rates, and would it drive GCC investors to emerging markets and more domestic spending? These are questions investors and other market analysts are watching out for. Now, stock futures rose early on Thursday. Let's look at the U.S. markets now. Wall Street, preparing themselves for the key retail sales data and the start of the Federal Reserve's September policy meeting, which started today. Now, on the futures side, to the S&P 500 climbed 0.36%. We see the Nasdaq also up 0.61%, and the Dow Jones advanced 0.28%. Microsoft has announced, as a buyback program, which made its shares rise 2% after that announcement. We saw their quarterly dividend hiked by about 10% to 83 cents per share. And that's the amount they're going to be buying back. It's about $60 billion. And also we see Intel, the shares popped about 7% in pre-market trading after the company said it plans to make its foundry business a subsidiary. Investors on Tuesday will also be looking at, as I mentioned earlier, the retail sales data for August. Investors also going to be on standby for the Fed's longer anticipated rate cuts, and this move could help boost earnings growth for companies. Let's look at Asia now and see how those ones performed, how they closed trade today. It was quite mixed in that region, with Japan's Nikkei dropping as much as 2%. We saw that 1% drop because, before, pairing some losses. They were on holiday yesterday, and investors are also awaiting that U.S. Fed, the possibility if the U.S. Fed is going to cut rates, that loosening cycles of the tightening cycle that we've been seeing. Now, Japan's Nikkei, as I mentioned, lowered by 1%, and now back to, it's still at 36,000. And then we see stocks fell also because the yen strengthened. That stocks fell in that country because the yen strengthened. That's for a 6th straight session. Now, let's look at other markets now. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was also up 1.37% at the final hour of trade. Shanghai is closed. Korea, that's the Kospi Index, is also closed. And we also see the Nifty in India up 0.15%, closing that region up in positive territory. So the markets are looking good. Mixed sentiments, mixed for Asia markets, but we're seeing the U.S. stocks looking vibrant ahead of that, possible rate cut, and they're just waiting to see it. For months, the time is finally here now. So tomorrow we're going to find out.
Yeah, but I'm almost sure that a lot of the cut expected has been priced in by investors.
True.
Because this has been in the news. The percentage of cuts, is it going to be 25? Is it going to be 50 basis points and all of that? And I wonder how this will drive our own MPC decision, which is just next week, and I don't know if it will move a lot, but as your analyst had talked about the possibility of a hold, that's what a lot of economists
the
are
sentiments are saying they should hold, and let's see what, we've just had this pump price hike. We've seen so many things happening. We need to see how the market is feeling before we take any rash decision.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But I am scared, I won't lie, because with all of the energy costs that we have seen beginning from late last month, I think, and then to this month, I wonder what the inflation number will look like. So even if there's a hold for this, can we overcome the impact before the next MPC perhaps will now start another hawkish move again? I don't know, but we'll follow the numbers.
Follow the numbers and see, hopefully.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Will. All right, now let's head to London, where a new poll from the Bank of America shows that UK is Europe's most preferred stock market. We know that UK are very proud of their services sector. That's their glory. Now they have their stock market also being called the most preferred in Europe. And I'm sure that Juliana is very proud of this. They've overtaken Germany. Germany is lagging behind the UK now. Juliana, good afternoon.
For the UK government and also investor sentiment, which has been rattled over the past couple of years, particularly if you go back to the contentious divorce from our European partners, Brexit. There were so many concerns, particularly around the city, about where we would stand in our global competitiveness, because there were rules that weren't in place that didn't favour the services sector. But I think the reason why the Bank of America have listed the UK as the most preferred stock market destination in Europe is now because of Brexit. And post-Brexit Britain, I think America and other destinations see Britain in a more favoured position because they don't need to stick to EU regulations. And we know that especially the tech-heavy NASDAQ have had major issues when it comes to compliance within the EU. So that's one of the reasons why. Also as well, geopolitical stability, I think, because of the fact that we've got the channel in between mainland Europe and Britain, investors see Britain as relatively geopolitically stable. Of course, I know there are discussions now about whether Britain are going to go in harder when it comes to the war between Russia and Ukraine. But in terms of proximity, we're further away. And I said this is a really good story, Innie, for Britain. And it is, because just 24 hours ago, we were discussing the fact that Darktrace, which has been a very successful stock market firm since the COVID lockdowns, it's a cybersecurity firm, they announced yesterday that they're going to be delisting from the London Stock Exchange, and they'll be heading to New York. And this isn't the first time that we've seen really strong, competitive British firms delisting. A lot of this is to do with mergers and takeovers. But, you know, having such a negative story 24 hours ago about the blue chip index, and then you've got this pretty good assessment on the UK stock market by the Bank of America is a really good sign, especially going into PMQs for the Prime Minister at a time when everybody is focused on the economy.
Yeah, and I'm sure the investors, other markets there are excited about this. I hope that shows in the numbers.
It has been reflected in the blue chip and intraday, because the all shares up is up by 0.59%, the FTSE 100 up by 0.60%, and the FTSE 250 up by 0.545%. In the currencies market, the British pound is trading up against the US dollar 2 by 0.03%, though down against the euro by 0.03% and down against the Japanese yen by 0.12%.
All right, Juliana, thank you so much for that, and congratulations to you guys. All right, let's go over to Berlin now. Well, Berlin has been overtaken by the UK, talking about the stock market. But now, before we get back to the market right there, over the past few years, a simple trip to the grocery store has turned into quite a nightmare for a lot of people, not just in Nigeria. Now it's the European consumers, especially for German consumers. Actually, the country used to have really low food prices, but they've gone up, and Lars is experiencing it, and he gives us a first-hand experience. Lars.
Thanks for having me, Innie. Well, that's an excellent question. Indeed, it is the question a new study by German economic paper Handelsblatt has been looking into. Because for the past couple of years, consumers were wondering if producers had raised their prices or if retailers were to blame. Of course, those two parties simply blamed each other. Well, now the not entirely surprising answer is both are indeed to blame for food price inflation in Europe. Let me give you some names and some numbers. Now, first of all, for an overall look, prices for food and non-alcoholic beverages were up more than 12% in 2023. And going back to 2020, that's pretty much before COVID and the energy crisis hit, prices are actually up by around a third. That's, of course, much more than regular inflation, and it put a real strain on people. Now, this new study I mentioned found that Europe's largest grocery store chains, in Germany that's Rewe and Metro, but there's also Britain's Tesco and France's Carrefour, they were able to raise profits by 3.8%. Meanwhile, the big food producers like Nestle and Unilever raised profits by 3%. In both cases, those higher profits were evidently achieved on the back of consumers.
So it does seem like grocery business owners in Europe are making a lot of money.
Yes, almost. Well, the big ones are. There are, however, some losers in the game too. The study found that those food producers with revenues of less than €1 billion, you could say these are mid-sized companies, actually saw profits drop by 10% in the past year, and that was following another year of lower profits too. So why is that? The experts are saying that as prices rose, the relations between producers and retailers went downhill. Each side was in it mostly for individual profits, and that led to some supermarkets delisting products if the producers weren't giving discounts. And it led to some producers not delivering to grocers if they weren't paying enough. Now, this cat and mouse game worked for a while, but it also worked only for the large companies. A multi-billion euro corporation, of course, can afford to walk away from a retail customer for a while. A much smaller company can't, so they got squeezed.
Yeah, I hope investors are watching and listening to all of this.
Well, it's Fed week, so we're looking at economic data from the US, mostly because tomorrow's expected rate cut marks a bit of a break for investors. Rates will likely drop, and markets are parsing data to figure out the exact context. Today, US retail sales and industrial output are due, and those numbers, together with future data over the next few days, will hopefully tell us whether this Fed action will be good or bad for shares. Outside of key economic data, all eyes are on tech. We saw quite some movement there yesterday with software giant Oracle leading Nasdaq, but weakness in Apple and Nvidia. So there's a little bit of a reshifting going on. Microsoft, in the meantime, has announced one of the biggest buyback programs ever, also raising its dividend, and that is certainly something shareholders are excited about.
All right, Lars, thank you so much for that. Let's come to the African continent now. We're starting from Zimbabwe. Farmers there are getting smart. Those are blueberry farmers. They're expanding their coast and exporting to more countries, including Asia.
Zimbabwean farmers are aiming to capitalize on the increasing global demand for blueberries, but self-funded growers like William Zireva cited lack of funding and minimal government support as barriers. Despite being one of the fastest growing blueberry producers globally, with production doubling to 7,000 metric tons last year due to favorable climate conditions, Zimbabwean farmers struggle to secure finances for their operations.
We have an export going to Germany for the first time next week. The bulk of our crop actually goes to Asia.
Zimbabwe's horticultural exports, driven in part by blueberries, exceed $100 million annually. The sector's exports, which peaked at $140 million in 1999, were disrupted when former President Robert Mugabe initiated a seizure of white-owned farms to resettle landless black citizens. Growing a hectare of blueberries in Zimbabwe requires at least $100,000 to import plants, peat pods from Europe, and special shades for the crops. Other costs include refrigerated packaging warehouses and water resources. Zimbabwe's Horticultural Development Council, HDC, says the lack of long-term finance was a significant barrier to the sector's plans to double blueberry hectareage to 1,500 hectares by 2030.
We're on 570 hectares and our tonnage is around 5,000, 6,000 tons.
The HDC CEO believes that there is the need to grow the hectareage and maintain the country's market share.
But still in Zimbabwe now, authorities have deployed a national gold mobilization task force to Zimbabwe's 8 mining provinces in a strategic move to increase gold deliveries to fidelity printers and refineries. And this initiative is part of the government's effort to ensure that all gold produced in the country is accounted for and delivered through official channels. The task force, a collaboration effort involving the country's security apparatus and the Ministry of Mines and Mining Development, was sent off during a workshop in Harare. Its primary objective is to monitor and ensure compliance with gold delivery processes from artisanal and large-scale miners. Speaking at the event, Mines and Mining Development Minister Winston Chitando highlights the growing global demand for gold, citing its role as a safe asset amidst geopolitical uncertainties. He notes that the price of gold had surged from around $1,900 in September 2023 to over $2,500 currently, which increases the importance of ensuring all gold produced is properly accounted for. Now, the African Development Bank Group has approved a $6 million grant to support the federal government of Somalia in strengthening state capacity to build its financial architecture in order to promote inclusive and equitable growth. The Somalia Financial Sector Development Project will focus on improving the capacity of financial institutions, including the Central Bank of Somalia, Somalia Development and Reconstruction Bank, and the Financial Reporting Center, to formulate efficient credit delivery and to implement anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing measures. It will also enhance financial sector expertise through targeted training and assistance. The reforms seek to build a competitive and globally connected financial sector in Somalia, enhancing stability, trust, and financial inclusion while attracting private investment. Somalia has long grappled with security threats from armed groups that depend on illicit financing. Strengthening its financial institutions is therefore crucial for its stability and that of the wider Horn of Africa region. Integration into the global financial system has been hindered by insecurity as well as institutional barriers. Strengthening the country's anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism financing, and bringing it in line with international standards will enable the integration of Somalia into the global financial architecture. Good news for Egypt, because the imports in that country significantly increased in the first half of 2024, rising to $2.324 billion from $1.785 billion in the same period in 2023, and this is according to the Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics, CAPMAS. Wheat remains a crucial staple food for the country, contributing to the overall rise in a raw material import, which reached $5.621 billion in the first half of this year. That's up from $5.223 billion the previous year, a gain of $397 million. However, in June 2024, wheat imports dropped by 21.5% to $261 million, down from $332 million in June 2023. Imports of medicines and pharmaceuticals also decreased by 11.9%, totaling $233 million, compared to $265 million in June 2023. Overall, imports for June 2024 saw a 3.3% decline, amounting to $6 billion, down from $6.21 billion in June of the previous month. And Fitch Ratings says it has upgraded Tunisia's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating to CCC+ from CCC-. The rating agency said the upgrade reflects the country's stronger external position and the government's ability to meet its large fiscal financing needs. Those factors, however, are balanced against limited access to external financing, uncertainty over the ability and willingness of the banking sector to take on large volumes of domestic debt, and a budget that remains vulnerable to external shocks. Fitch says that the Tunisian government requires 10% of GDP in long-term domestic financing this year and between 10 and 12% next year, 2025 and 2026. Let's head to the crypto space now, see what's happening there with Laddie Williams. Laddie, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Edie. Well, it's all about rate setting season now, and we're seeing the crypto market react to what's expected, with the U.S. Fed. everyone's been talking about either a 25 basis point cut or 50
50.
basis point cut, but another has been added, the third one, 75 basis points.
Wow,
But is that going to happen?
That is very ambitious.
Yeah, so it's all about, it's data driven at this point, whatever the US Fed does, but I don't know if they have that much conviction to do 75 basis points. But they
75 is a
might
lot.
shock us. You never know. But we'll be watching out for
We'll
that.
see, exactly.
Yeah, so we see the market now, green, mostly on the screen. We see some pockets of red with BNB there, $541, down about 1.06%, but it's a bullish sentiment we're seeing, even though investors are bracing for what the US Fed is going to do with the rates. We should get that decision tomorrow. Let's look at the sentiment in the market. How are investors feeling? Are they afraid or are they bullish? We know it's been a fearful market for some days now, 33 points. It did get to extreme greed earlier this year, but now we've seen the market struggling in fear. So traders are not sure if they should be bullish or it's time to maybe take some of the profits off the table. Let's look at the major cryptocurrencies that we track. We see Bitcoin there, $59,118, up 0.77%. But we know Ethereum, that's been dropping against Bitcoin since, I think, August. They touched about $2,800, but we've seen a big drop all the way to below 2,300. But we're seeing a recovery now for Ethereum. Some renewed interest with staking with Ethereum there, bringing back the bullish sentiment. BNB, 1.06% down on the flip side, not following what we're seeing with other big cryptocurrencies. Let's look at some of the headlines now. We see a Trump-backed WLF. They've confirmed the token launch. That's World Liberty Financial as a cryptocurrency project supported by the Trump family. Is set to introduce its governance token, WLFI, the token which it plays a key role in decision-making within the project and will be launched under an SEC regulation D exemption. Then Ripple's Chris Larsen has transferred about 50 million XRP tokens. So definitely when whales start moving coins around, you wonder what are they going to do with it? Are they going to sell? He's a co-founder and the executive chairman. That's Chris Larsen, and he's made the first transfer of XRP after 11 years. That wallet has been dormant for a while, but he's made that move, and we've seen XRP price that's soared over 4% in the last hour. But who knows what he's going to do with this? Is he going to sell it? And selling, that's dumping most of those coins, means there'll be pressure on the price of XRP. Well, joining us now is Rume Ofi, financial market analyst. Hello, Rume.
Good afternoon, Larry. It's my pleasure to have you again after a long while.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is the first time we're talking since I got back. Thank you so much for staying on, Rume. But we're seeing a lot of interest now, you know, with U.S. politics. We're seeing interest with Bitcoin, especially from the Trump camp. Talk to me about this new coin and this new project that the family is working on.
Yes, I checked it and I realized that it's not as it's being perceived. It's when you hear the name, you'll be convinced that this makes some sense, but it didn't make any sense because the person behind it, which is called Chase Hero, calls himself Dirty Bag of the Internet. In 2008, I beg your pardon, he came up with a couple of things, even challenging the regulator, that is the SEC, to come and get him, you know, and he's done a couple of things, been arrested for marijuana. Then there's something that really struck me in this whole process of this project. Is a DeFi project built on Ethereum, is that 70% of the holders are insiders, which is a red flag as far as I'm concerned. In fact, people should not get involved in projects where a whole lot of 70% of that, the 70% of the project of tokens are held by inside. It makes no sense as far as I'm concerned. Then also with the fact that the industry globally are not happy. We're not happy concerning the fact that someone like Donald Trump, former president, and someone actually going possibly back to the White House, supporting a project like this, and the person is not known in the industry, linked in 2008 with a project called OMI that actually tanked right now to about 96. It brings to mind for me that this project is more like a cash grab kind of thing again, considering the fact that maybe the elections are coming in a way to get money to do a couple of things. But it is not looking nice. The president went to the Bitcoin conference at some point this year to talk about the reserve for the US. Also said he's going to fire the SEC chair, Gary Gensler, for peradventure being hostile to the crypto space. But going back to back a project of this magnitude where the person involved somewhat is not known in the industry and has gotten himself involved in certain terrible things to harm the industry and doesn't have a good personality, so to say, it only gives a red flag. He says he's going to be talking about it on Monday.
Yeah, but Rume, what is it
Go
about?
ahead, Ladi. Yeah.
What is it about? Celebrities, endorsing some of these crypto projects, and some of them actually releasing projects that are supposed to be, linked to them. We've had a couple. We've had, Davido and some other celebrities, in Nigeria and abroad actually release tokens, but none of these tokens actually do well.
Yes, because if I use the popular parlance of Pidgin English, is someone who will say "see finish." They feel like, oh, nothing will happen, But the truth is, I like the fact that the current SEC chair is saying that, man, if you come here and do certain things, you'll be brought to book. I believe if we have with time, let's say in the US, by adventure, the Democrats are putting structures around the crypto space where you can't just come and do what you like. These guys are going to be apprehended. In fact, in the global celebrity tokens that have actually gone terribly down or not doing well, we also have the Davido's coin as part of them. I didn't see the brain jotter. Maybe in time to come is going to join, but I think it is not good at all. And they think that even this guy that is coming up with this project, Chase Harrow, he actually said in 2008 again that in crypto you can come up, create a coin, and people are going to buy it irrespective of anything possible. He said you can create anything in crypto and people are going to buy it. So let's put that to a test as time goes on.
I guess
if a regulator are
poverty,
going to allow people to buy things and get away with it.
Yeah, I'm sure poverty plays a big role in this. We have people that are just trying to make a buck, somehow. You feel like if you buy, one of these celebrity tokens and maybe you buy at 5 naira, maybe you could get to 10 naira and you make a profit, but it ends up tanking. But still speaking...
But Ladi, a lot of people in Nigeria have lost money in crypto, if you ask me, in recent times than in other innovative tech. So if you agree with me, this is not the right time to be able to gamble because things are really hard and Nigerians are going through a lot.
Right, yeah. If you're definitely, there's a cost of living crisis and you don't want to go gambling some of the little money that you're managing at this time if you're buying fuel at the price that we're buying, at this time. But thank you so much, Rome. It's always great having your perspective. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Larry.
Yeah, so there you have it. If you plan to gamble, in this market, just know what you're doing because it might take away that little one you're managing. So you have to be very careful.
I wanted to ask if the crypto community is snobbish to celebrities.
Right, yeah, because I'm sure if
we had Davido, it didn't work. We had Jota,
yeah,
it didn't
maybe
work.
if you ended up buying a Davido coin and you lost a lot of money, I'm sure if you see Davido on the street, you're not going to be happy with him, I think.
All right, Ladi, thank you so much. Well, that's it on the program. Thank you so much for being a part of Business Incorporated. Do remember you can always watch this program every time you go to Channels Television YouTube's channel, or you can watch Business Morning, Business Incorporated. And we'll be back again tomorrow for the midweek show. John McQuarrie, enjoy the rest of the day.